Some World Cups are remembered differently from how they actually were. I realized that when I took a closer look at every tournament and ranked them all. Keep in mind I can't go over every notable match and detail, otherwise this video would be hours long, so these will be very brief summaries. Anyway, let's start with the 1930 World Cup. I'm not gonna fall into the trap of praising it just because it was the first World Cup. It was bad. Only 13 teams participated, there were withdrawals, and Egypt even missed their ship to Uruguay. Few European nations took part, and most of the continent's powerhouses stayed home, largely because of the Great Depression. The final was good, the tournament's main redeeming quality, but that alone isn't enough to save the 1930 World Cup from the bad tier. The 1934 World Cup wasn't much better. Continental representation improved slightly. Egypt became the first African team to participate, but only 2 South American nations entered, and Uruguay boycotted the tournament after Europe largely ignored the 1930 edition. There's also the small issue that Benito Mussolini's fascist Italy hosted the event and used it for propaganda, and many claim the tournament was rigged in Italy's favor. Overall, the matches were better than in 1930, but the straight knockout format is another downside for me. I want a group stage too. 1934 lands in the bad tier. Sorry for being a negative Nancy, but the 1938 World Cup was also bad. Once again it used a straight knockout format without a group stage, and once again it was extremely Eurocentric. An Asian team participated for the first time, which is notable, but only 1 South American nation entered. And South America was furious that Europe hosted the tournament again, believing the World Cup should alternate between continents. Austria's withdrawal after Germany's annexation was another terrible downside, even though I don't mind Sweden's free ticket to the semifinals. There were some memorable matches, Brazil against Poland especially, and the final was good, but it still isn't enough to lift this tournament out of the bad tier. The 1950 World Cup wasn't great. As the first tournament after World War II, it's understandable that Germany and Japan were excluded. But most countries behind the Iron Curtain didn't participate either, including strong teams like Hungary and Czechoslovakia. Withdrawals during qualification and even right before the tournament left only 13 teams, all from Europe and the Americas. The withdrawals also created uneven groups, which annoys me more than it should. Earlier I criticized straight knockout tournaments, but not having a knockout stage at all is even worse, even though there was a de facto final. Still, if a tournament produces one of the most famous upsets and finals in football history, it can't be bad. Mediocre is as high as I'll go though. The 1954 World Cup was better. Europe probably had a couple too many spots. I would have preferred to see another South American team and Egypt representing Africa. But the tournament was reasonably diverse for its time, and the overall structure was solid, with 16 teams, a group stage and a knockout stage. My biggest gripe is that teams only played 2 games instead of a full round robin. Why? Still, there were several iconic matches, including the massive upset in the final, and I have a soft spot for the mighty Magyars. Who doesn't? The tournament also had the highest goal per game average in World Cup history. You could argue for good, but I'll go with decent. The 1958 World Cup is obviously the greatest tournament ever, don't ask me why. No, but seriously, it wasn't bad, though it's hurt by the absence of African and Asian teams. The format was perfect for the first time, group stage with full round robin, followed by a knockout stage. And there were plenty of iconic moments. Pele's breakthrough performances, Just Fontaine scoring 13 goals, dramatic groups, and Brazil's legendary run to their first World Cup title. Again, there's a fair case for good, but I'll go with decent. The 1962 World Cup was plagued by violent clashes and a toxic atmosphere, but there's an immature part of me that likes that, even though it often went too far, especially in the infamous Battle of Santiago. Defensive tactics were also becoming more common, and the goals per game average dropped to 2.78, and it has never reached 3 again since. There were some decent matches, but none that truly stand out for me personally. One positive change was deciding group standings by goal average instead of playoffs, which I like, but overall this tournament still sits comfortably in the mediocre tier. Former FIFA president João Havelange once claimed the 1966 World Cup was rigged for England, but those accusations are completely unsubstantiated. He offers no real evidence beyond the referees' nationalities. I have plans to make an in-depth video on this. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. Anyways, while I don't believe the tournament was rigged, refereeing controversies were more common than usual, and many South Americans felt European teams were favored. Still, controversial matches can add drama rather than ruin a tournament, to a point though. The final was iconic, not least due to Jeff Hurst's famous ghost goal, and it was a great final in general. There were also other memorable stories, Eusebius, Portugal, and North Korea's shocking win over Italy, and more. African teams boycotted the tournament because they weren't guaranteed a spot, which, along with the refereeing controversies, keeps this World Cup out of the good tier, but it still has enough iconic moments for decent. The 1970 World Cup is one of the best ever. Yellow and red cards were introduced and refereeing improved. But what truly made the tournament special was the football itself. Brazil's legendary run to the title is the obvious highlight, though I won't go too deep into World Cup winners in this video, since I might make one ranking them all if this reaches 10,000 views. Mexico 1970 also had a strong continental diversity, featuring teams from 5 confederations. And from this point onward, diversity isn't really an issue anymore, so there's no need for me to mention it when ranking upcoming World Cups. Anyways, the matches were fantastic. Brazil's games, West Germany against England, West Germany against Italy, the iconic final, and more. Despite defensive trends emerging in world football, the tournament still delivered exciting attacking play. It clearly belongs in the amazing tier. Just like with 1966, Avalanche also claimed the 1974 World Cup was rigged for the host nation, but again, there's no real evidence. What is real, however, is that thousands of people were tortured and killed at Santiago's Estadio Nacional after the 1973 Chilean coup d'etat, which led the Soviet Union to refuse to play there, and Chile qualifying by walkover. Despite that grim context in the qualifiers, the final tournament itself was still good. East Germany upsetting West Germany, Zaire's unforgettable antics, Poland's impressive run, and the emergence of Dutch total football all stand out. However, while the tournament had a final, and a historic one at that, it didn't have a proper knockout stage. For me, a World Cup without knockouts can't reach the amazing tier, so good feels right. The 1978 World Cup was hosted by Argentina, which at the time was ruled by an authoritarian military junta that persecuted political opponents, violated human rights, and effectively abolished democracy. Just like in 1934, the regime wanted to use the tournament for propaganda and to gain legitimacy. Johan Cruyff famously didn't participate, though not because he boycotted the tournament. He and his family had survived a kidnapping attempt shortly before it. Swedish player Ralf Edström was arrested for talking to someone in Buenos Aires. I shouldn't laugh, but the military quickly released him once they realized he was a footballer. The tournament is also surrounded by match-fixing accusations. Researchers have found no definitive proof of government-directed fixing, but circumstantial evidence keeps the controversy alive. Like Italy 1934, the match-fixing allegations about Argentina 78 are more substantiated than Havelange's claims about the 1966 and 74 tournaments. When it comes to the matches at the 1978 World Cup, they were okay, not bad. Group 1 was good. There's also Tunisia's historic first win for Africa, Scotland upsetting the Dutch, and Austria beating West Germany, and more. But the infamous Argentina-Peru match is remembered mostly for the wrong reasons, whether you think it actually was rigged or not. And again, I really dislike second group stages. Overall, Argentina 1978 belongs in the bad tier. The 1982 World Cup was played in a Spain undergoing transition from dictatorship to democracy. They were awarded hosting rights way back in 1966, and to be blunt, it's just dumb luck Francisco Franco died in time for the tournament. But whether due to dumb luck or not, Spain in 1982 was a great World Cup, even though West Germany and Austria basically colluded to advance at Algeria's expense, in what became known as the disgrace of Gijón. As the name implies, it was a shameful match, but it's still iconic. For me, the disgrace of Gijón makes Spain 82 better and worse, simultaneously. There's also Algeria's upset over the Germans, Northern Ireland against Spain, Hungary's rout of El Salvador, and I haven't even mentioned Brazil's legendary team yet. Their amazing goals and the historic match versus Paolo Rossi's Italy, Tardelli's iconic celebration after scoring in the final, and the incredible semi between France and West Germany. While I, again, hate second group stages, there was a knockout phase, if only with 4 teams, and this World Cup has too much to not be in the amazing tier. Mexico 1986 could have been Colombia 86. They were originally awarded hosting rights, believing it would be a 16-team tournament, but withdrew due to a combination of the new political leadership in the country not wanting to stage the tournament and question marks surrounding whether they would have been able to fulfill FIFA's demands. So one of the best World Cups ever wasn't played in cities like Bogotá, Medellín and Cali, but in Guadalajara, Puebla and Mexico City, where the 2 most iconic goals in history were scored in the same match by the same player. Cheater or not, Diego Maradona made Mexico 86 iconic, but there were other memorable parts. Danish Dynamite, Belgium's incredible match against the Soviet Union and eventual run to the semi-finals, Michel Platini's France, and a lot more. It belongs in the amazing tier. What I think about Italia 90 isn't exactly a secret. It was probably the worst World Cup in history in terms of the football played. Cynical defensive play dominated, it produced the fewest goals per game the tournament had ever seen, alongside a then record 16 red cards. Also, it had one of the worst finals. Memorable storylines like Cameroon and moments like Gaza's tears aren't enough to save Italia 90 from the bad tier. No pun intended. The 1994 World Cup was much better, despite football's relative lack of popularity in the host nation, the United States. A lot of upsets, underdog runs, and entertaining matches in general. Oleg Salenko's 5 goals in one match, Maradona's possessed eyes and suspension, not good, but iconic, like Roberto Baggio's penalty miss in the final. I have to mention Andres Escobar's tragic fate, but I don't consider it a part of the World Cup itself, which was the first with the backpass rule and 3 points for a win, 2 of the best rule changes in football history. The tournament did have the worst final in World Cup history, and USA 94 is pretty bad after the quarterfinals in general, but it still deserves to be in the good tier. The 1998 World Cup was the first to ban dangerous tackles from behind, allow 3 substitutes per game, and, less popularly, use the golden goal rule. But it was still a good World Cup. Too many memorable matches to list them all. Croatia's semi-final run, Dennis Bergkamp against Argentina, Norway upsetting Brazil, Nigeria shocking Spain, and more. The Ronaldo final controversy has to be mentioned, whether you understandably think it detracts from the tournament or makes it more iconic, despite being something bad. I'm on the fence about that, but it was still an overall good World Cup. The 2002 World Cup was the first in Asia. It has a lot of what I look for in tournaments. Entertaining matches, upsets and underdog runs. But not like South Korea in 2002. Earlier I said controversial matches aren't necessarily bad for tournaments, but a line was crossed in Korea's 2002 games. I have overlooked some refereeing controversies at previous World Cups, but South Korea's wins over Italy and Spain are in a league of their own. Watch highlights if you haven't, it's completely insane. Another gripe I have is that the semi-finalists except Brazil weren't great. Korea speaks for itself, Turkey had bracket luck, and it was a mid-German side that was hyper-carried by Oliver Kahn. Yes, I like underdog runs, but only to a point. I'm very picky, but it was still a World Cup with iconic scenes. Senegal's run, the US upset over Portugal, and 2-0, the group of death, Ronaldinho against England, and of course Ronaldo. All things considered, it was a decent World Cup. The 2006 World Cup had good matches and no shortage of iconic moments. Simunich's 3 yellow cards, Maxi Rodriguez's incredible decider against Mexico, the Battle of Nuremberg, Ronaldo beating Gerd Müller's goal-scoring record, the semi-final between Germany and Italy, Zidane's performances, Panenka, and yes, even the headbutt. Especially the headbutt. But something's missing for this World Cup to be amazing tier. I can't quite put my finger on what. It has to at least be in the good tier though. The 2010 World Cup was the first in Africa. Ghana's heartbreaking quarterfinal against Uruguay became one of the most infamous matches in tournament history, and Frank Lampard's disallowed goal against Germany was another iconic moment, which led to the introduction of goal line technology. The infamous Jabulani ball produced both spectacular and bizarre goals. The matches themselves were generally fine, with a fair number of upsets which I like, but overall South Africa 2010 feels respectable rather than spectacular. Decent. Brazil 2014 was a very good World Cup. There were lots of goals, the Netherlands demolishing Spain, James Rodriguez lighting up the tournament, Costa Rica's incredible run, Messi leading Argentina to the final, and dramatic knockout matches throughout. And of course, there was the unforgettable 7-1. It was also the first World Cup with the goal line technology, which I like. Some people will place this World Cup in the amazing tier, which I fully understand. But for me, something is slightly missing. Again, I can't put my finger on what, so I'll stick with good. The 2018 World Cup was played in Putin's Russia, but unlike previous problematic hosts such as fascist Italy and Argentina's junta, there's no reason to believe the regime negatively affected the tournament itself, from what I could tell. On the pitch, it was a good World Cup with many memorable moments. Croatia's historic run to the final, Russia upsetting Spain, Mexico and South Korea eliminating Germany, Belgium's comeback against Japan, and great matches like France-Argentina and Spain-Portugal. It doesn't quite reach amazing for me, but it was definitely good. The 2022 World Cup also had a controversial host, but like Russia 2018, there's no reason to believe the Qatari regime affected the football itself. And the football was incredible. Saudi Arabia shocking Argentina, Japan beating Germany and Spain, Tunisia defeating France, Cameroon beating Brazil, Korea shocking Portugal to advance, Morocco's historic run, Croatia eliminating Brazil, Germany against Costa Rica, Cameroon versus Serbia, and the chaotic Argentina-Netherlands quarterfinal. I can keep going. And the tournament ended with the greatest World Cup final in history. If you think a November-December December World Cup, hosted by what's arguably an autocracy and absolute monarchy, can't possibly be top tier, that's understandable. But I'll place Qatar 2022 in the amazing tier, because that's what the football was. Qatar is also scheduled to host the 2026 Finalissima, as of recording this at least. This video takes a closer look at the Finalissima's history and alternate history, including hypothetical Finalissimas stretching back to 1961, plus the lost Copa America.